Hello, travelers, and welcome to Go See, Do Explore.
Here, we dive deep into the heart of travel, sharing hidden gems, unforgettable experiences, and the stories that make each destination unique.
Whether you're a seasoned traveler or dreaming of your next getaway, you're in the right place to get inspired.
I'm Christopher.
And I'm Ashley.
And together, we'll set the course for your next great adventure and discover the stories that make each place unforgettable.
It's time to go, see, and do more. Let's explore. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Go See, Do Explore. We just found a study, I guess it is, that Expedia did that is their hacks for getting the best deals in 2025, and we thought it would be something interesting to talk about.
Yeah, we had, as you know, if you've been listening, we just were in the Travel and Adventure Show in Chicago and have heard some of these already or similar pieces of information. But it's interesting because it is definitely different than a lot of the prevailing wisdom, at least some of these tips. So we'll draw attention to those two as we bring them up. But anyway, let's dive into specifics and I'll stop speaking so vaguely.
So the first section of this study is the best day to book your flight. Isn't the old wisdom, didn't they say Tuesdays?
Yeah. The old wisdom is Tuesday, but then also for years, and I'll come back to this after we share this information, for years they've been saying there is no one day that is best. Anyway, let's share what it actually is now.
So for a domestic flight, you can save about 6% booking on a Sunday. And for an international flight, you can save about 17% booking on a Sunday. According to this study, the most expensive days to book airfare are Mondays and Fridays. And this is not the days that you're going to be traveling. We're going to talk about that in a minute. This is just the day that you open up your computer and do your search.
Now, here's what I'm going to say about this. This is, of course, true for the window that they evaluated. I'm not convinced that this is really a trend. I think that if you look back now in any period of time, there is going to be a day that is cheaper than other days on average. But that doesn't mean that that's predictive of the future. And so it's good to know that right now Sunday seems to be like a good day to book, but I wouldn't hold on to that as a rule of thumb forever because the fact of the matter is, and this has been the prevailing wisdom for some time now, the algorithms are setting these prices. It used to be that a person would go change prices on a certain day of the week, right? And so that's where that Tuesday advice came from. But now it's all driven by algorithms, and the fact is the prices are going to float up and down as the predictors of demand cause them to, and that's going to be very dynamic. So right now it is Sunday. It does seem to be Sunday, at least for the evaluation period of this study and the information that Frommer's has as well. However, I would not hold on to that as like a forever truth.
I mean, for a domestic flight, 6%.
Someone should do like a P-test on this and see if that's even a significant amount of money.
Right. Like 17% on an international flight, like if you're going across the world, that's going to make a difference. But a domestic flight, 6%, what is that like? It could be like just a few dollars.
Yeah. So. I hope we have some statisticians that listen to this and are impressed that I know what a P-test is. Anyway, just
I just wasn't even going to touch it.
Yeah.
So according to this study, the best days to actually do your traveling for a domestic flight is Saturday, which was kind of surprising to me, being that it's a weekend. But I guess if you're taking a weekend trip, you probably want to be at your destination on Saturday.
There's a reason why Saturday is the cheapest, right? Is because usually if you're taking a trip for fun, you're not leaving on Saturday. And usually if you're taking a trip for work, you're not leaving on Saturday, right?
But so, I could see a week-long trip Saturday to Saturday.
Certainly.
Wouldn't be terrible. But yeah, a weekend trip, you're leaving Thursday or Friday and coming back Sunday or Monday.
Yeah.
So
I was doing some flight searching based on this and based on what Russell Hannon said at the travel show to see if I could find a flight to a destination out of Detroit Metro that would leave very early on a Saturday morning and a return flight that would come back very late on a Saturday night. But I didn't find much, unfortunately.
For international travel, Thursday tends to be the best day to get the best price.
Yeah.
The most expensive, and as we just said, I think it makes sense, is Sunday. because you probably have people flying out for week-long trips on Sunday and then people traveling for, weekend trips coming back on a Sunday. So that makes sense to me.
When I've searched, I've seen that. Very often, if you can stay one more day and come back on Monday, it's like a lot cheaper.
Now, the cheapest month to travel, I think will surprise some people because, especially when we talked about Italy and Europe travel in general, we talked about how July and August are the busiest months in a lot of those destinations. The cheapest month to travel, according to this study, is August.
That is interesting. I don't know. And I think if we looked into this a little bit more, it'd be interesting to see, are they looking primarily at airfare or...
I think this is airfare.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say I know that like August is kind of the end of summer, but I feel like we know a lot of people that take family vacations in August and stuff.
I mean, schools do go back to session. Kids go back to school in August. But I would imagine that the first 2 weeks in August should be free for most people to travel.
Although, I don't know, when I was working in Ohio, they went back like way earlier than Michigan. It would be like, I think the second week of August they were back in school.
That is surprising.
So, yeah, I don't know.
The most expensive month to travel, honestly, from our research and from like the trips that we've taken, this doesn't surprise me, but it's March.
Ooh.
As someone that has spring break set as the last week in March every single year,
Yeah.
we've definitely felt this. I feel like the first time we went to Puerto Rico was at the end of March, and I think that might be the most expensive. Or have our Christmas flights been more?
The Christmas flights have been the same or more.
Okay.
I think it was like $750 a person round trip on American, which is, a better experience than Spirit Airlines. Stay in business, Spirit. Don't go out of business. But I'm not always going to say nice things about you. But I want you to keep existing.
I think about Christmas week, and that's going to be one of the most expensive weeks to travel. That's 1 week. The beginning of December tends to be a pretty inexpensive time to travel. Even like up to like the week before Christmas can be inexpensive. But March, you've got spring break for colleges and then schools all over the month. So it makes total sense to me that March is like consistently higher throughout the whole month.
Yeah. I think the spring break and the fact too that most college spring breaks, some of them are the last week of February, but many of them are the first week of March. So you get kind of that. And then you get kind of the K-12 on the back end of it.
I mean, there are still some schools that, stick to Easter week, but I feel like that's
almost always March too. Sometimes April,
Yeah.
but almost always March. And it's too bad because that's when we travel in the spring. And, I do find like if you're a cold weather destination person, when I look at flights in March, if you want to go to other cold places, there are lots of deals to be had. But anywhere that's the temperatures are above 60 degrees Fahrenheit, that's going to be more expensive. Although I will say, like you said, I don't find it to be as expensive as Christmas week. But I'm sure that December overall is not as expensive because usually the first couple of weeks of December are pretty cheap weeks to travel.
right.
Because no one's doing it.
I did look at flights just for fun in April, and I was surprised at how inexpensive for like a long weekend in April to like some popular destinations.
This is what I do. I just look at flights for any time when we can't travel, and you'll be blown away by how cheap. Like we could go anywhere. Oh, it's so upsetting sometimes.
Apparently, we need to go somewhere in August this year.
I want to. I was trying to sell you on going to Puerto Rico in August last year, and you're like, no, it's going to be hot, but it's going to be the same. It's the same there all the time. You can fly direct for like $200 a person round trip or something like that.
So let's move on to the quietest day to travel,
Okay.
which I think it's interesting that it's not the same as the best day to travel. It's the quietest. And it says Tuesday is the quietest day of the week.
Does that mean like the least busy?
I guess it must be.
They're not using like something to measure the sound.
No, I think it means least busy.
Yeah.
The quietest month is February, which that doesn't surprise me at all.
It's a little surprising to me, given that, like I said, some college spring break is at the end of February, and you also have President's Weekend, which is a big travel weekend.
Don't we know it? There's a reason we're not in Disney World right now.
Yeah.
We learned some lessons.
that was a year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that's February that is a little surprising to me. But Tuesday, I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense. Tuesday is kind of like the Sunday of the week, right? Like.
That's a funny thing to say.
I'm sorry, I mean the Saturday, not the Sunday. Wow, I just ruined that metaphor, but you get what I mean. Like, it's kind of in the middle.
This I thought was kind of interesting because, people talk about how expensive things are and everything's getting more expensive. Apparently, flights are not one of those things. The average ticket prices are down year over year. Domestic economy flights, I'm assuming this is in the US, are down 1%. International economy flights are down 4%. So, I mean, it's not a huge difference, but they haven't gone up in general.
I'm totally speculating with, so 1% down in domestic economy to me feels like basically, I don't think we can read much into that. They haven't gone up, I think, is what you can read into that. The international economy being a little bit down, I don't know like what the factors are there. I could speculate on a couple of things. First of all, we've seen a real increase in the the low cost offerings to travel internationally. Think like, so with Mexico, for example, there are all these low cost carriers that have new code sharing agreements, or relatively new code sharing agreements, like Volaris and Frontier.
I saw that Volaris is actually increasing their flights to the U.S.
Yeah, so there you go. I think that's one.
And then you've got, Norse and French Bee.
Exactly.
And Neos is another one.
Yeah, so these low-cost European carriers. I want to say Condor, too. I think Condor is Lufthansa's low-cost carrier. They have these crazy green and white striped planes. Have you seen these?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to show you, and then you can react to these Condor planes. They look bizarre. And then the other thing I would wonder about and look into more would be just, I feel like you see airlines like Delta and United expanding their reach or their frequency on a lot of international routes. Like, I know the couple times I flew Delta in the past year, they're always bragging in their seat backs like, oh, now we fly to Rome every day. And like stuff like that. I mean, definitely the demand for international travel has been solidly increasing since basically the reopening of countries post-pandemic. And yeah, I think that's probably fueling prices decreasing, as well as, I mean, the relatively strong US dollar, I would think, would help from the US side of things, the cost.
Now, this next one, when Pauline Fromer mentioned, I'm assuming she was mentioning this study, some people in the audience got like visibly upset.
Yeah, well, it's, yeah.
So we talked about the best days to book your trip, but we didn't talk about like how far from your trip it is recommended that you book. For a domestic flight, the best prices, according to this Expedia study, the best prices can be found 34 to 86 days in advance, which I think it's on par with what they said a few years ago, which was a month to 3 months. That's about the same. Or it actually goes a little farther than 3 months, doesn't it?
Before you say the international one, I just want to say that's a wildly broad range of time. 34 to 86 days. Like,
I mean, it's about 1 to 3 months.
It's about 1 to 3 months.
Oh, no, it's more than 3 months, isn't it?
No, it's about
3
3 months.
I keep doubting myself.
But my point is that, like, if you were trying to get the best deal, and I said, okay, so you're going to travel in January, so book sometime between October and December. Like, that's not anything. Like, of course the best deal is going to be found in that time.
But
like,
it's not last minute. And it's not a year in advance.
Okay. I mean,
like, I know some people.
It's never been a year in advance.
I know, but I know there are people that travel that way.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
But this is what had people in the audience visibly shaking their heads. Like, in no circumstances would I do this. The best price for an international flight that Expedia found, 18 to 29 days in advance.
I think the thing that you run the risk of course, is that for your flight, that won't be the case.
Right.
And your route will sell out and you'll have reservations and you'll be stuck. What you might consider, what I was thinking about when they said this, is, okay, maybe go book a refundable ticket, in a normal range so that you have something to rely on. And then look a month out and see, like, oh, is there something cheaper? Is there something better? And then cancel your refundable. Or, we're not big points people, but if you book with points, that's the easiest ticket to get refunded without any kind of fear. I mean, the other thing, too, is if it's on an airline that you fly routinely now, and I don't want to encourage people to cause chaos, but if this is on an airline you fly routinely, if you cancel, you get flight credit, right? So, like, if I go book a $2,000 ticket, an international ticket, and I cancel it because a week before I find something for $700, Now I've got, $1,300 in credit, which if I fly that airline enough, I could absolutely use, right? You'd have to be in that situation,
Right.
which we're not, honestly, with any airline, we're not in that situation because we change it up too much. But if you are, I mean, lots of people are. So it's like, don't just write that off as bad advice because it's too risky. Like, I think that you could find ways of still making sure you're going to get to your destination and yet possibly taking advantage of deals.
Now, it's not on this study, but Pauline Fromer also mentioned, how far in advance was it hotels? Before?
It was like the week before, yeah.
And some people freaked out about that.
I wouldn't freak out about that.
But the thing about that is, with hotels, it is not difficult to book refundable hotels, especially since COVID. They have to be very upfront about their cancellation policies. And I would say 99% of the time we book refundable hotels because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Booking a non-refundable is usually not that much better of a deal.
Right.
If it is, we'll do it. But usually it's not.
So it's not that hard to book a refundable hotel if the price drops in a week before. You're probably pretty sure if you're taking a trip or not a week before. Cancel it, get a non-refundable option. And then if something does come up and you have to cancel the trip at that point, hopefully you will have travel insurance. I just wanted to mention that. That's not part of this study, but that's something I've been thinking about since that talk she gave.
Before you go to the next one, I have something. I just want to show you what a Condor airplane looks like. Everyone go look up what a Condor airplane looks like so you can have the same reaction at the same time.
That's bizarre.
Isn't that weird?
It's like Andy Bernard's pants.
Yeah, so that's Lufthansa's low-cost carrier.
So the last little bit of this part of the study is about the best time to book your flight to avoid cancellations. You're 22% less likely to have your flight canceled if you book between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. I find that interesting that's 9 a.m. because, the Samantha Brown's Wisdom was the very first flight of the day.
Yeah.
The very first flight of the day, I guess, is more likely to be canceled than a flight at 9 a.m.
I don't know if you can assume that from this.
You can't assume that.
I don't think that that's necessarily what this means.
It makes a lot of sense that if you're booking a later flight, it's more likely to be canceled because if it's delayed and delayed and delayed, your pilots can time out. Like, that stuff makes total sense. Mm-hmm. This study also says that September is the best time to fly.
By 1.2%.
Yeah. I just saw that. I'm like, okay, maybe that's not.
Someone do a p-test.
1.2% less likely to have your flight canceled in September. Is that significant? I don't know. I was going to say it makes sense because you don't have hurricanes typically in September and you don't have big winter storms. So I was thinking that makes sense, but it seems like only 1.2%. It doesn't really take that into account.
That's what the p-test would tell you, is whether it's statistically significant or not.
All right. Well, before we get into the trending destinations for 2025, let's take a wine break.
Okay. Time for a wine break. We're here for the wine break. Loyal listeners of the Go See Do Explore podcast will know that last December, probably, we did mulled wine for a wine break. And we used Two Lads Roll a Red, which is a favorite for us for mulled wine. I gave my recipe on that episode. You can go back and find it. Probably. I'll give it again just briefly here too. Because today we have mulled wine again. Why are we doing it again? Here's why. Not long after that, it was Christmas and we were over at my parents' house, and one of the wines that my mom had was a mulled wine that had been mulled previously. It was already mulled pre-bottle, but it was a cherry wine. And we've had cherry wine, we've had mulled wine, but I don't think I had ever had mulled cherry wine. And it was really good. Cherry wine is, I don't want to say big in Michigan, but definitely it's a thing here in Michigan because for those who don't know, Michigan is the #1 producer of tart cherries in the U.S. And so
there's even a festival in Traverse City, usually around the 4th of July. There's the Traverse City Cherry Festival.
Absolutely.
And in Leelanau, there's a store, which I guess the flagship is in Leelanau. Yeah. They're all over the state nowadays, but that is called Cherry Republic. And everything they sell has cherries in it. We were just in one the other day, and they literally had cherry capsules, like a pill.
I would not buy that, to be clear. Do not endorse that. But let's try this, and then I'll talk more about what this actual wine is. That's pretty good.
Yeah. It's very tart.
It is. So this is maybe hard to talk about as a proud Michigan person, but this is a dry cherry wine, although it's actually semi-dry if you read the fine print.
I can't imagine it being drier than this.
From the Door Peninsula Winery. So we went to the Door Peninsula a few years ago. We went to some of their wineries. They were pretty good. A lot of the fruit was from elsewhere.
Not the cherries, though.
Not the cherries, right. The Door Peninsula, just like northern Michigan, does produce cherries. Though, not as many. Just to be clear. But and they make a cherry wine. And so I did this with my usual technique, which is to take about a tablespoon of mulling spices from the Spice House.
Which we can link in the show notes.
Yeah, if you're curious to know more about the Spice House, just go listen to our, was it last 2 episodes ago?
Yeah, when we were in Chicago.
And so I used that, a tablespoon of that bottle of wine. I heat it on low heat. You don't want it to boil for about 30 minutes and then strain it out. And that's it. I was surprised actually how much evaporated this time. I was like, wow, these 2 mugs are like most of what was left. But I had it very low. So anyway, you definitely lose alcohol when you heat it. So that makes up for the fact that it's concentrating, I suppose. But yeah, I really like this. I would do this again. What do you think?
Yeah, it's good. I feel like the one we had at Christmas was a little sweeter.
It was, yeah. And I thought about putting some sugar or some honey in here or something, but I know that you tend to like these mulled wines on the more tart side, so I didn't do it.
I don't tend to like sweet beverages.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, good wine break.
All right. So the bottom of this Expedia study, they talk about, or they mention 5 trending destinations, both domestic and then 5 international destinations that are trending in 2025. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about. So in the domestic category, the 5th trending destination for 2025, up 65%, is Philadelphia.
That's interesting. I don't really know what to make of a lot of these as we run through this. I
wonder when this came out, because did it have anything to do with their Super Bowl win?
No, I don't think so.
We've been to the Philadelphia airport. We had a wonderful 6-hour connection there.
And we drove through one time also on the way to New Jersey.
But we've never been to Philadelphia. It's one of those places that's on my list for that, historical American significance. But I have to say that the Philadelphia airport is one of my least favorite airports in the U.S. Not as bad as Orlando. That's my least favorite airport in the United States. And I'm a Disney fan. Those Disney fans that are talking about how much they love the Orlando airport are liars.
You need to introduce me to a Disney fan who loves the Orlando airport.
Oh, there's always people that are like, I'm so happy I'm here. Like, well yeah, when it's the beginning of your vacation, but when you're stranded there, it's terrible. Anyway.
I just want to know why people
Orlando did not make this list.
No. I just want to know why people are always on the floor there.
Because they don't have enough seats.
But no, there are seats.
I think I read that they're starting to redo that terminal. I don't know if it was the terminal that we're always stuck in.
The Spirit Frontier one.
But they did say that now that they have their fancy new JetBlue terminal, that they're going to make the other terminals not as terrible. But anyway, we were supposed to be talking about Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Number 4 is Washington.
Okay.
I don't have much to say about Washington.
I assume this is everyone taking that new Amtrak route, the Floridian. That runs through Washington, D.C.
Does it go through D.C.?
Yeah.
And for some reason, you need a flight when you're on the train. This is flight
specific. Yeah. Okay. So no.
I don't really have anything to say about Washington, although I feel like maybe this is not fair, but I feel like with that recent crash, it makes me a little nervous to fly into that airport.
Yeah. I don't think that there's anything worse about that airport than
at least at night. Because I think there's a visibility problem.
No, there's a problem of a helicopter in the approach path.
But that's normal.
No, there should not be a helicopter in the approach of any airport ever.
Anyway.
No. It's an unacceptable failure. But anyway, keep going.
We didn't mean to get into recent depressing news. Number 3 is Kansas City, which is another place that I've never flown. I've never been.
Kansas City from Detroit is very often an inexpensive flight. I also have some family history stuff there that would make a good episode of our vlog sometime, maybe. So maybe we should go. But yeah, I would love to go to Kansas City and maybe listen to some music, maybe get some barbecue, maybe go to the Watkins Mill State Park and do other Kansas City things, which are currently escaping me. That would be a good one.
Oh, what's funny? Both of the teams that played in the Super Bowl are
Yeah, that's
on
true.
this.
I mean, maybe there is something to that then.
I don't know when
Like,
this was released.
It's one of those things where maybe just having those cities kind of in the news or whatever is like, it's interesting that Kansas City, Washington, and Philadelphia are also all up by 65%.
Yes. That is interesting.
So I don't know what to make of that.
Number 2 is New York.
New York, heard of it?
I know.
Up and coming destination, New York. Have you heard of this place?
I have to wonder if it's people like us looking for cheap connections. I mean, maybe I'm totally making that up.
Well, that could be, especially we were talking earlier that a lot of these low-cost international flights are running out of Newark or JFK. Like, again, this is wild speculation on our part. I cannot emphasize enough how little research we did. So just take that with an absolute grain of salt, or maybe like a quarter teaspoon of salt. But I mean, just if I'm permitted to speculate, we've been to New York a lot more in the past year and a half than we have been. Mm-hmm. And one of it was for the travel show, and the other was to catch a cheap connection to Europe.
And the one that pretty much the reason that we did it in this direction, the number 1 trending destination in 2025 is Detroit.
By 170%, which I mentioned the first 3 were 65%. New York was 70%. Detroit is up 170%.
If you listen to the episode where we talked about travel and leisure's places to go in 2025, Detroit was at the top of that list. And I would imagine that has something to do with it, but also the factors that led it to being number 1. Back in 2024, right? The NFL draft was in Detroit, and I think they got the biggest crowd to ever attend an NFL draft. And I think people that were watching it at home were surprised by what they saw because it didn't live up to the picture of Detroit that they had in their head, I think. Mm-hmm. Wonderful cultural sites. They reopened the Michigan Central Station for the first time since 1988 this past summer. And we talked about that on the podcast, and I wrote a blog post about it. There are so many reasons to visit Detroit. My one fear as a local is that it's going to drive up the prices of us leaving.
Literally, when I saw this, I was like, do we need to move to Detroit right now? Not because I really, really want to, but I'm like, just I don't want to miss out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, is now the time to get in on the ground floor of like, or maybe not the ground floor, but maybe sort of the first or second story of like an amazing Renaissance? Maybe. It's not that far. We could move.
But is this going to drive up our flight prices?
From Metro? Mm-hmm. No, I feel like if anything, it would drive them down because it would give us more options. Increased flights means more options. An increased demand as long as supply can keep up, which we have a nice airport. If you haven't flown through Detroit, by the way, like excellent airport.
Especially on Delta. The McNamara terminal is gorgeous.
But even our second terminal is like nicer than a lot of places' first terminals.
No, that's true. It is true.
Yeah.
Wasn't it just 2024 that, who did that study?
It's J.D. Power and Associates.
Yeah, J.D. Power rated Detroit Metro Airport as the best mega airport in the United States. So yeah, we are definitely spoiled. And then we go to places like Orlando, and I was like, I want to do something.
And if you live in the Metro Detroit area, I want you to stop complaining about Metro because you don't know how bad the rest of the airports are. Right? Like I feel like everyone likes to dunk on Metro because like I think it used to be bad in like the 70s and 80s or whatever.
Well, yeah, before they had the West Terminal or whatever.
The North Terminal.
The North Terminal.
Yeah. But anyway, like our McNamara is the oldest terminal we have now, and it was built in the early 2000s. Like they're both really new.
Evans is newer than that?
Evans is newer than McNamara.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to the Detroit Airport Hour.
It's something that I'm passionate about because you don't know. With Metro Detroit people, like, oh.
Well, it's kind of the same how a lot of people around here talk about how bad everybody drives.
Oh, yeah.
But then you go anywhere else, I was like, no, you guys need to leave Metro Detroit. It's so much worse than other places.
Yeah, now, if you get into an accident in Metro Detroit, the other person might not have insurance.
Yeah, that's why everybody drives so well. Because if you drive bad, there's a chance you're going to jail.
Yeah. Anyway, come to Detroit. And if you come to Detroit, let us know. Email us, podcast@gocdoexplore.com. Would love to give you some tips or just, talk about your itinerary. Yeah, let us know if you're coming to Detroit.
All right, now in international destinations, there's a few of these that I'm worried I'm going to absolutely butcher in my pronunciation.
I know. I like that you always get to read these.
I know.
Like, that makes me happy.
Honestly, number 5 is the one that I'm just not sure how to say it.
Yeah.
Chengdu, China.
Sounds good to me.
Is up 65%.
I don't really have a concept of where that is in China, like if it's near other big cities.
I don't either.
But or is like that where the Beijing airport is?
Maybe.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Number 4 is Perugia, Italy.
Do you know where that is?
No.
Can't emphasize how little research we did before. I feel like we should look that up.
Is Perugia? Should we look up Chengdu too?
Sure. Chengdu is in Sichuan. So
I know about their peppers.
That's right. Sichuan province. So I wonder if that's becoming like maybe a food destination.
Perugia is in Umbria, which is in like north central Italy.
That sounds good too.
The average weather in Perugia is high of 49, low of 32. It sounds kind of cold there. Is it elevation? Anywho, don't need to go up from Perugia. Number 3 is Tijuana, Mexico, up 85%.
That's interesting. This is the predictions for 2025, right?
It just says
trending destinations.
Yeah, so I'm guessing what people are searching for.
I feel like we're still probably, well, Tijuana is probably me. I'm probably driving that searching. But like, I know we're a couple of years past the pandemic at this point, but I wonder if some of these are still being driven by the growth overall from the total crunch that was like 2020 through 2022.
I know before you've said that you can't find flights to Tijuana, the United States.
Last I knew,
if you click here.
It was true at one point that there were no international flights from Tijuana.
So this shows you.
So it looks like they're going from Phoenix now.
Yeah, I don't know any other, but I just picked a random weekend in March and found flights Detroit to Phoenix, Phoenix to Tijuana.
Mm-hmm. And I think the reason why that is because like Tijuana airport is literally on the border of San Diego and Tijuana. So like domestically, it usually makes a lot more sense to fly San Diego, and then you can literally walk across the border. There's a foot crossing, which is what most people do, I think. But I really want to go there because I want to go back to Valle de Guadalupe, and that's kind of the most convenient way to get there.
Number 2 on the list is Bucharest, Romania, up 150%.
Mm-hmm. This is not surprising to me. Central Europe is getting a lot of boost right now because a lot of Western Europe has become so expensive, and Central Europe really does have a lot to offer. We're a long time past kind of the depressing Iron Curtain days in that part of Europe, and a lot has happened culturally and with influx of money, especially for those who are part of the EU, the Eurozone, which Romania is not, I don't believe. But nevertheless, Romania's language is also non-Slavic, right? Which I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but
You're saying things that I am not. I don't know.
That sounds cool. I would go there.
I was just about to say, don't you have a coworker that goes to Romania?
I have a coworker that goes there every summer. But he goes to Transylvania, which apparently just got a new big airport. He was telling us that previously, as recently as last summer, he had to fly to Bucharest, and then it's like a couple hour bus ride, or like they hire a driver. But now I guess Transylvania has an airport that you can connect to.
And the number 1 trending destination internationally for 2025 is Goa, India, up 155%.
That is cool. I wonder if that's the somebody feed Phil effect. So he didn't go to Goa.
No.
But he, in Lisbon, went to a Goan restaurant, and the guy was quite charismatic.
His name was Jesus.
Jesus from Goa.
I think that's what his restaurant was called, wasn't it?
Right.
Jesus of Goa.
There's like my couple of reference points to Goa is that, and then the Goan seafood stew that I had at Sanaa at Disney World. Those are my reference points to Goa. But yes, they were a Portuguese colony for a long time. I know that they speak Portuguese there. And the Goan food that I've had has been very, very good. No pun intended, I would go to Goa.
You go into Goa?
I'm not trying to make a joke, but yeah. 155% on that one was significant, as well as 150% to Bucharest. To me, those are big deal numbers.
I don't know about the food of Bucharest, but really these other 4 really seem to be places that would be food destinations. Mm-hmm. And I mean, although, I think most Americans that visit Tijuana just cross the border in San Diego. But yeah, that's like a day trip from San Diego.
Oh, it's like you could throw a rock, basically. They literally are adjacent. There's a wall between them, but they're literally adjacent.
But yeah, so that is Expedia's travel hacks of 2025. And I will definitely put a link to this article in the show notes if you would like to know more, if you'd like to see their fun graphics. You know, the things in the bins.
It's a nice report. And if we said anything that's wrong, let us know because, again, we didn't really research.
Or if you're a statistician and you want to do your
the p-test.
P-test.
Yeah.
I don't know how you run a p-test, but
it's pretty easy. You just punch some stuff into a computer. You need to know what your alpha is. Usually 0.05 is what I use.
Okay, sure. Thanks for listening to Go See Do Statistics.
I have software on this computer. We can open up and do it.
All right. We will talk to you later.
All right. Bye. That's all for today's episode of Go See Do Explore. Thank you for joining us and sharing in the wonder of travel.
Keep the spirit of today's adventure alive by checking out our blog at goseedoexplore.com for even more travel inspiration.
Don't forget to rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps fellow travelers find us and join our community.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep traveling by any means necessary.
I'm Christopher.
And I'm Ashley, bidding you farewell and happy exploring.